have the unenviable task of doing post-lunch, so my job is to make sure that everyone stays awake. So as Ilka mentioned, I'm the founder and CEO of Academic Language Experts, and our mission is to help scholars in the social sciences and humanities with the publication of their research. So it's an author services company. And for the last 10 years, I've been thinking about the question of how do we make sure that researchers from around the world, and especially researchers for whom English is an additional language or is not their first language, are on an equal playing field, and that their research is considered alongside everyone else's research, and really the best research is published in the end of the day. And I think that that's one of the core questions that I want to explore here in this panel, is to think about these researchers, and is AI an opportunity to actually address their needs in a way that we wouldn't have been able to otherwise. I also recently founded a startup called SciWriter AI, which is a company that's challenging the status quo of writing in the research context, and asking, can we enable and empower researchers that are not native English speakers to write their research with the help of generative AI, where there is research integrity, where there is responsible use of AI, but yet use the power of these language models in order to really level the playing field for these researchers. Some of you may have come across AI Tool Up Tuesdays, which is a really fun course that I've been running for the last few months with a lot of the entrepreneurs that are in this room right now. And we had over 4,100 both publishers and researchers to register for that. So if you are curious and want to learn in bite-sized pieces about AI tools for research, it's a great way to kind of just jump in and learn a little bit more in depth. So thank you. Feel free, I'm quite active on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out and connect.
Hi everyone, my name is Katrin Delek, and I'm a product manager at Frontiers. I'm responsible for the quality management space. Frontiers is publisher open science platform, and our mission is to make science open. We use AI technology in publishing, so we have our artificial intelligence review assistant that is underpinning the quality checks and quality control of the manuscripts. I joined Frontiers in March earlier this year, and based in the UK. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Hong Zhou. I'm originally come from China. I'm born in the Xi'an, the oldest capital in China. 3,000 years history. I'm not that old. You can see this is the hometown of the Terracotta Army. So that's where I born. And then I did my PhD in the AI and the research. And then I moved to the engineering, software developing. And then after the several years, I figured out I'm more interested in the combining business and also the engineer technology. So I decided to move to the product and business. Now I'm with Wiley Partner Solution. I'm leading the intelligence service group by leveraging AI, big data, cloud technologies to develop intelligence service to help our customers and the publishers, researchers to be more successful in the open science. You can see the vision is to enable the automated and intelligent research journey. And we have the knowledge mining, audience profiling, screening integrity, and the knowledge discovery, the platform. So in last about 10 years, the AI has been gradually integrated in the literature, the world's largest scholarly publishing platform. You can see we have already integrated our service on over the 700 websites for over the 2,000 publisher partners, about 40 million full text. There's many, the publishers, our customer. We want to help the customer to discover this content, consume the content, and monetize and optimize their operations based on the several pillars. And as all you know, the last year, the Wiley set up, the Wiley Partner Solution division, and we want to leverage, our technology and the expertise and the human expertise and the services to help the publisher to be successful in the open science movement. And then now it gives us the broader, bigger the stage to play, to integrate the AI, to apply the AI to support the business. You can see that our AI can be have been integrate, applied from the authoring, author engagement to acceptance, to the editing, production, and finally to the publication, to impact the publication, distribution, discovery, etc. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Claudia, Regional Manager, Public Affairs EU for STM. So my role is a Public Affairs Policy one, and that's the background, the perspective that I'm bringing today. I wanted to share in particular something like a project that I've been involved with at STM in the past year. Of course, since the launch of ChatGPT, publishers have rushed to adopt clarifications of their author policies, editorial policies, and so on, as to kind of provide guidance on how these new tools could be fitting into the publication process. And of course, we've seen a flurry of this statement. So a couple of months ago, we thought that at STM we could try and bring all of these thinking together. And it's just this week that we're going to be launching some guidelines, best practice recommendations for authors, reviewers, editors, publishers, all those involved in the publication process, to kind of see what the thinking, where the consensus is at the moment of how generative AI can be used. So there's some common ground on which we think that we agree, that publishers are setting kind of the same recommendations and indications to their communities. A very important one, for instance, that we heard this morning a lot of times is that responsibility for content, for instance, should stay with authors and with publishers who continue to take responsibility and keep accountability for what is published, for the quality, for all the checks and balances that happen throughout the process. Anyway, there's this in general positive approach to AI. Publishers are certainly willing to embrace all the potential that it has to bring. It's going to be interesting where we're going to move next. So what are the questions that are still out there compared to the consensus that we have on some of these issues? And I'm hoping that some of these questions we will be able to discuss together today. So what is the role of publishers in licensing content, in producing our own language models, or to maybe partnering with AI companies in making sure that that the models that they're putting out are maybe more specific, and what are we requiring in terms of citations and attributions for generative AI outputs. All of these, I think, that are going to be the questions that will accompany us going forward, and hopefully today. Thanks.
Thank you all very much for those opening remarks and introductions about yourselves. I'll get back to the results from the Menti in a minute, but before I wanted to kick it off with asking the panel about some of the things that we talked about while we were preparing for this. And we started with the observation that it's been about a year ago that ChatGPT was released to the public. I remember that because also last year we had an Innovations Day and we had an STM Trends. And this was still very, very new at the time, and everybody was a little surprised, overwhelmed by it in some cases. I think for many of us that really marked the advent of generative AI into consumer markets and into the minds of many of us. So my question for you in the panel is, if you look at how academic publishers have responded to this about a year after the fact, what has surprised you in those responses? Maybe Hong, can I invite you to say a few words first?
For me, I think I have a mixed feeling. And one side, I have to meet with many publishers. Everyone wants to talk about the generative AI, and very excited. They're willing to embrace, the AI capabilities, and they want to know more about how generative AI can support their business. This is one side, positive side. But on the other hand, there's more the ethical and integrity issues and created by generative AI, especially AI generated content, manipulated images, etc. The fake authors. That's all. And also, I think there's another thing publishers also want to know how we can apply the AI. They can apply the AI to diversify or generate more revenue based on their existing content or the new content. And is there any the new business model is needed?
Thank you. Does that resonate with others? Maybe Kat, would you like to? Does that resonate with your experiences or anything else that has surprised you?
Sure. So for me, it was very surprising that early on some publishers attempted to regulate the use of ChatGPT and other generative AIs by simply banning the use. And ChatGPT changed the landscape forever, and it's here to stay. So it should be rather about creating like very clear guidelines and regulation of transparent disclosure. So this is what we really need. And I know that many researchers and publishers are currently working on a general agreement where that would inform like where and how generative AI should be used for research and publishing. And obviously how to inform each other in a transparent way.
Yeah, if I could just add what I would call the author perspective, at least the way I see it, is that publishers have set up guidelines where you've got on the one hand authorship, which is kind of forbidden, and then on the other hand you've got proofreading, which everyone's okay with, and then there's this big giant gap in the middle, which I think is largely unaddressed. I'm really excited to see the STM guidelines because maybe it is addressed there. But I think as the publishing community, we actually need to go further in depth with the guidelines that are being written, because I think researchers are playing around and experimenting in the middle, right? So they might be using some paraphrasing tools for a literature review. Well, are we okay with that? Are we not okay with that? They may be, throwing a peer review into a large language model, getting some ideas, and then using that as inspiration for their own review, taking some ideas and not taking others. They might write a draft using GPT, but then go and rewrite major parts of it. All of these are use cases that I think are somewhat gray, and maybe they're gray for us, which is why they're gray for authors. And I think that it's really important for us to go back to our editorial teams and together with STM and think about how do we add another layer of sophistication or dimension to those policies that we're building out.
I can maybe add on the STM guidelines. I fully agree that there's this grey space in that what we say in the guidelines is, anything beyond a basic author support tool needs to be disclosed. So I think that we agree on that basic use and the need to disclose. Those are two firm points, but then we kind of resend the decision to editorial teams. So saying, different journals, different disciplines will have a different tolerance also for different uses. And so it's important that authors disclose the way that they use that and also how and why, and the threshold there is not clear. And then it needs to be a discussion with the editorial teams precisely as to what is allowed and what maybe needs to be done differently.
So I agree with the principle of disclosure in principle, but I have two major issues with disclosure. Number one is, in order to disclose something, I as the researcher need to know what I'm allowed to do and what I'm not allowed to do, so I'm disclosing what it is that I am doing and why it is that I'm doing it. If publishers leave it entirely to the author's discretion about which tools and what forms they can and can't use, I think it's going to be murky in the author's eyes what best practice is and where they can and can't be using it. I want to credit ACS. They put out like a best practices for how to use and not use AI, and I think that's really helpful in moving forward the conversation so that we're actually having a real discussion about it. Number two is I want to caution from disclosure as a solve-all, because I think in the not too distant future, using LLM tools and functionalities will be the equivalent of searching on Google. I mean, it's already in many ways that way. So I think if we asked anyone, authors, please tell us how you used Google in your research. It's like, everywhere and anywhere and throughout the entire course. So we have to be realistic about what it is. Or what if I don't know that an AI tool is powering a technology I'm using? So then all of a sudden, maybe I'm breaking a rule without even knowing it. So I just think there's some complexities here to tease out.
Hong, I saw you nodding violently with the notion that, we don't ask authors, how do you use Google in your authoring work? Does that analogy resonate with you, that in a couple of years' time, it just doesn't really make sense to ask how they have used generative AI and not?
No, definitely. These always comes up in discussions. We have predictive writing in Outlook, for instance, or in Word, and this is what's happening with Microsoft. They're just incorporating their Copilot in all software. So how do you know whether the software that you're using is actually, is AI powered, as you said? So I think that we're at the stage now where we're setting some ground rules to manage the transition, but we need to see what happens and how we can, we're defining now what doesn't need to be disclosed. So for instance, author support, writing support, so spelling checks, grammar checks and all of that. I don't think that those are, the consensus so far is that those are maybe not relevant. We're also saying what cannot be done. So another piece in the best practice recommendations is that for peer review, for instance, we're saying probably AI shouldn't be used in that phase. For a number of reasons. There's confidentiality, copyright, like intellectual property implications in asking a third party to review something. It doesn't take responsibility, of course, for the edits that it puts forward, and a number of other things. So I think that we're defining the margins, but we do need to come to the core of what we think is allowed and what not.
And also, all the guidelines, frameworks, policies, the continuous improved and not fixed. So based on the real scenario situation, the technology, the roadmap, the development, and then the corresponding the policy and the framework will be developed as well. Yeah.
Great, and I wanted to move the conversation a little bit towards tools and technology. The question that I have for the audience, if you look at the current availability of all sorts of AI-powered tools, technology, where do you feel are the gaps? If you see it, the wealth of opportunity, just only think back about all the things that we heard in the lightning talks, where do you feel is really the greatest underutilized potential to use these sorts of tools, AI in general, to improve scholarly communication? And I'm going to ask Kat to go first, if that's all right, while this is being tested. One of the things that struck me in the feedback that we got from the audience is that protecting research integrity scores relatively low, so that suggests that might still be an area of opportunity to apply AI. And I know that Frontiers has been pretty active in that, so maybe you could speak a little bit about that.
Sure. So what I see as a gap currently is full submission, because it feels very often surprising that with abilities of AI, we still require authors to fully fill in submission forms and manually input files and names and institutions and so on. It's a very lengthy process, and it could be automated with AI. So there is a lot to do in this space, so I see it as a gap.
How do others feel about where are gaps of where we could do much more to seize the benefits and the opportunities?
Yeah, I think for me, the sort of elephant in the room, or the obvious answer, is we are the holders in this room of the most verified, accurate, reviewed content in the world. Why is that not powering the large language models? And instead, where regurgitated Reddit is what's powering them, and among other, sources, some of which are better than others. And I think as the arbiters of verified research and what ends up becoming what is known as fact, we should be pushing to closely align with OpenAI and Anthropic and the other big companies to say, here, we're coming to you to use our information so that the outputs on the other side aren't all hallucinated, BS. And I think that's, maybe we need to work together, because maybe no single publisher can come to the likes of OpenAI and do that alone. But I think that would be a win-win on both ends. I know we're all very protective, and rightly so, over our content. But I think both from a business perspective, as well as from a just impact and mission perspective, it would make sense for us to be a lot more involved in what's powering these LLMs or small language models.
I completely agree with that. Actually, that was going to be one of my observations on the first question. So what has surprised me in the past year? Probably that there's been this kind of reflective period for all of us, and a bit of action has missed. There's loads of things happening within the industry. So there's loads of startups, so there's loads of new application, new products, but it's still been in our sphere, whereas it would be really interesting to see this crossover with the bigger tech guys. That's something that we haven't seen yet, but I do think that the time will come for it. And otherwise, in terms of gaps, I think my reflection was similar to what Kat was saying. I think that user interface could be much improved. There's probably loads of time that can be saved for authors through automatization. I think that we'll also come to the realization, why are we asking authors to submit, to prepare documents that can actually be written in an automated way? So I hope that that's where it will be moving. And similarly, and actually this comes back also to what we were saying of product integration into existing software. I think that that's also a challenge, making sure the new products and new features are not kind of outside of the reach and awareness of researchers, but making sure that those are actually baked into the workflow that they know and that they're used to using and just act within.
I also think there's several gaps. I mean, to stop, to slow down the large language models and the generative AI. So one is obviously, I think that we all know the cost. It's although I think there's so many the general AI large language models, but when you use it, it's not about for research. I mean, it's for the commercial use and for the daily use, and in the large scale, it will be very expensive, because they not count, if you go to the cloud the provider, they not count, calculate the input, but also output, and also the deployment, the inference. So it's quite expensive. So another one is about the infrastructure. So when we want to use this large language model in our, the workflow, in our the process, do we have, the infrastructure, our pipeline is ready to integrate? For example, the data and the feedback loop, because this is very important. We want to gather the feedback from the users and to continuously improve and monitor this. Do we have this? If not, and also is the data siloed? Is the data, if put in the different department, in different database, how can we leverage this? That's another thing about, it's a black box. It's about the large language model itself. It's a black box. And this is a natural, the conflict between between the transparent and the non-biased, the nature of the open science, and also, the nature, the black box, the character of the large language model. So this is the black box will reduce, the user's trust to use the AI itself. So I think this is several steps. Yeah.
Thank you for all those perspectives. We have the results from the Menti, and I thought let's take a few moments to maybe reflect on that. Over 70 people provided input, so good number of statistics. Thank you very much for that. It's all kind of sort of in the middle, which I think is the first interesting observation. A little bit more experience towards summarization of topics, a little bit less in research integrity, as we already spoke about. Also finding editors and peer reviewers a little underserved comparatively. Good news, we have one of the Vesali's Innovation Award finalists will be speaking about their solution for that using AI, so stay tuned for that. And I know this may be difficult to reflect on because the data is coming in pretty much live, but does this align with your expectations? Does it surprise you guys? What are your thoughts about this?
I would have said, I would have put summarizing topics first as well, so that doesn't surprise me. Probably research integrity, I thought that it would come out a bit higher in the ranking, but maybe that's because I hear a lot about the STM solutions and the Integrity Hub, so that could be.
For me, because I work on the information discovery, knowledge discovery about the search recommendation, I know this is one of the very hot area, which also and the big area which the generative AI large language model can help. Now we move from the keywords-based the search discovery to the more the semantic, more the conversational-based the search, because many times the user don't understand, don't know what they're really looking for exactly. So they have to talk to the AI to in the different rounds, several rounds. Then they will help them to understand. Oh, this is what I'm looking for. Then ask the right question, get the exact answer, but not the hundred the links. So the user still have to go through each of these to find the answer by themselves.
Thank you. Avi, got any reflections from you on this?
Maybe share. I'm not very surprised by the results of the polling. Maybe the only thing is that, as Claudia mentioned, protecting research integrity, maybe because it's close to my heart, I think it's important to incorporate AI because it speeds up this process and it just ensures that correct articles are published. And the other one is assisting the offering process. It's because the easier we make it for the authors, then it just increases the submissions, and I think this is in general has very positive impact.
If I can follow up on what Hong was saying, I did a little bit of an experiment. I went into the credit taxonomy and I asked myself, how many of the bullet points that count as authorship does AI actually tick off? And it was somewhere between, I think there are 14 points, and I think I would say confidently it does about 10 of them. And if we're being honest with ourselves, in these, in these journal articles where there's 100 authors, most of the authors are not doing most of those 14, contributions. So, and I was trying to make a theoretical point. I made this point in the Scholarly Kitchen. I got an email from the credit taxonomy, very upset that I had, stained their name. But my point in trying to do that was to ask exactly this question: is what is authorship? Is authorship entirely responsibility? Is that how we're defining it? And that's okay if we're defining it that way, but then why can't we rethink authorship in a way where we can say there was a significant contribution from an AI tool without all of a sudden then saying, well, and therefore I'm not responsible for it. I think most researchers are happy to take on that responsibility for their own research, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be allowing that space. Maybe it's a new, a new place within the article to give that, it's not even necessarily credit, but to recognize the contribution of the tools that we're using.
Can I generalize that question a little bit? We spoke about, what does it mean to be an author, and is that only for humans, or can AI be authors, and under what conditions, and how many of the 14 credit taxonomy boxes would they need to tick? If we think a little bit more broadly about what are today human roles in academic publishing, authors, but also editors, reviewers, do you see a future where some of those functions may be fulfilled by AIs instead of humans? And I guess related to that, how would we evaluate when is good enough, and do we apply the same measures to AIs or humans? Humans are fallible as well. They make mistakes when they review or as an editor. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. I think that most actions that researchers take and that publishers take will be augmented. We will augment the AI. It's not going to totally replace it, but there are things that already are replacing. I mean, this week my wife submitted an article and she got back within 2 hours a rejection with a load of Cascade journals that she should be sending to instead, half of which were totally irrelevant. But I was like, that's, and before she got upset, I consoled her, this is an AI bot, clearly, that's, giving her all these ideas and suggestions for other journals. And so it is already being used in different use cases. And in that case, yes, it has replaced humans. That being said, I think in the vast majority of the cases, the way I see it is we're going to turn more into quality assurance, kind of people, which I'm not sure I'm thrilled with that idea, but it's going to be running our processes through different AI technologies and then having the human oversight, the human loop. But again, as we give that contribution back to the AI systems, they improve. But I think it will be gradual, and I think it will be augmented before it becomes, I think these conversations around, job loss are a little bit premature in that sense.
Any other views or similar views about that?
I think the good enough or the trust also depend on the application where the AI can be used. For example, in the life critical, the science or the medical science, they have to be very accurate. So in this time, and also we have to make the trustable AI if we want to apply this, and they're very accurate. But on the other hand, if we apply the AI in the creative, industry to generate, the novel book or something, so maybe they have different definition of the good enough or different the definition of the trust. But I think the AI and the human, we have the different the strength, we have the different focus. AI is more focused on the consistent efficiency, and they can quickly automatically process all the data, etc. But human is focused on more on their strength is the critical thinking and the judgment, etc. So I think they can complement to each other. But my point, I always think, AI cannot replace the human, but they can provide the facility to the human to make this more productive. Especially in the publishing, in the peer review, etc. Not only because AI is not accurate enough, because hallucination, all these errors, nothing is 100% accurate, but also they cannot take the responsibility. So AI can do the initial screening and do a lot of the work, provide this information for human to make informed decisions.
So our future lies somewhere between critical thinkers and QA. It's a bit of a continuum still to go. Kat, Claudia, do you have thoughts about this? Any reflections?
I completely agree that it's impossible to replace humans at the moment. It's like AI cannot be trusted when it comes to making the most important decisions, like acceptance and rejection of an article. And this has been also highlighted a couple of years ago by Committee on Publication Ethics. So they issued a document on how to use AI for decision making. So that definitely cannot happen. But I think at some point it will be possible in the early stages of article preparation, for example, writing articles and even maybe submission. And it would be great improvement if researchers just could have the research hypotheses, then do the experiments, and then the generative AI could put together some figures and write a text to describe the results, and then the researchers could just finalize everything and make the conclusions. So as long as humans validate the writing, the citations, the conclusions, and take accountability for it, this could be great development. There are also small improvements where humans passively can be replaced, because I strongly believe that if we replace with AI those tedious, repetitive, time-consuming tasks, then it's really, really good. And one of that could be creating an AI bot that would replace customer service or customer support at publishing. That would be great improvement as well, to provide everyone with timely updates.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely loads of space for automation of processes. We're facing a number of challenges throughout the publication process that do come down to efficiency, speed in finding the right peer reviewers for a certain paper, having just much more efficient processes that do free up the researchers' time, because eventually that's what we always gonna come down to. Researchers want to do research and not the many things around it that do take time. There's loads probably in the space of research data and deposit and linking. There's loads in there. I think that the power in this will come from the interaction between and co-piloting between humans and algorithms and bots and research assistants and everything that we will see coming. Also, it's unthinkable to not use these tools. Now that the genie is out of the bottle, I don't think that there is any way going back. So I think that it just makes sense to figure out, again, like have a laser focus on the areas where it does make complete sense to use automation, and maybe wait until there's maturation in the trust level that we have for more delicate applications. I think that high risk will always have a bit of a special status. Also from the legislative side, that's kind of the approach that's been taken. So let's separate the high risk. So all AI tools that are used in employment and credit selection and healthcare and all of those, and let's make sure that we do not go wrong in those cases. And for all of that, there's high requirements and compliance and all of that. For the lower risk, we can think about, maybe certifications and, now thinking broader than just the publishing industry. But yeah, I do think that we should start from that tier first.
We have heaps more questions, but I also imagine people in the audience might have a question, or dare I say, a prompt for the panel.
As a researcher myself, there's a lot of discussions about guidelines for researchers and shaping how research is carried out and published. My question or comment is how do we involve the stakeholders of researchers in this process of creating guidelines? We talk about how researchers use these, but as the hands earlier showed, there's only a handful of researchers in the room. So how do we go about making sure that we develop these guidelines and work in tandem with researchers who are the people that drive adoption?
Who has the answer to that one?
Yeah. So we're launching our guidelines now for the first time, and these are kind of an industry-wide overview of what has happened. We do need to discuss how to keep them live and relevant, and it will be interesting, first of all, to see what the feedback of the industry is. It would be interesting to open those up for consultations, and actually I would also be interested in understanding whether publishers have done so. How are they keeping their guidelines relevant? What is the feedback that they've received so far? Where have been the main challenges, and where do authors have the most confusion about those? I think it's it's a bit cascading. Like now we reached that point where we can say, okay, the industry is saying that these are main principles that we agree on so far. And through that, publishers, so those who have their guidelines already, can see whether those are in line. And I'm sure that they will be thinking of what's the next step, and then it's sort of a loop in between, us as an umbrella organization, publishers, and their communities, essentially.
Do people agree? Any additions, other views?
The majority of authors that I've spoken to have this deep-bedded fear that publishers have this magic tool that's going to be able to detect when and where they use these AI tools, are also under the impression that our industry is very against the use of AI tools. So they either A, won't use them at all, or B, will go through a lot of hoops to try and hide their use. So I think we've got a lot of work to, and if what we're saying, what STM is saying, and I'm on board with this, that we're taking a generally positive outlook, well, then there's a gap, and we need to figure out how to, bring that gap down. I think probably a big part of it was the first few months of, a bit of panic, among ourselves, which was understandable. But it's hard to then change that narrative and say, no, actually, we're okay with it. Just do it properly. So there's a lot of work to be done. Obviously, bringing everyone in the same room is the first step. Researchers, publishers, universities, and funders. That's what I think, are the four that are kind of low-hanging fruit and obvious. And yes, us talking in our own echo chamber to ourselves about what policies just work for us, I think is quite short-sighted.
Thank you. Ale Kruczewski, Profi. when you say that you want the use of AI tool to be acknowledged, why do you need this? Let me be specific one step further. What would you trust more? A ChatGPT have written a data analysis pipeline on which my results are based, or a first-year graduate student have written data analysis pipeline on which my results are based. Which one is, you speak about hallucination, it's like humans don't make mistakes. And I'm now talking about unintentional mistakes, forgetting all the paper mills, publish or perish, only the unintentional ones. Why do you really think that the use of the ChatGPT would make my research less trustworthy? Or more trustworthy? Why do you need to know? Accountability is on the authors of the paper. That's why there are the guidelines that you cannot put ChatGPT as an author of the paper, because the thing is not responsible for whatever was written there. That's correct. But in all cases, as you said yourself, research is not done by a single person anymore. It's done by a big group. It is this group as a whole, and everyone in particular is responsible for various parts of the research. I used Google, I used Wolfram's Mathematica, I used ChatGPT, and it just made my research more robust, isn't it?
Thoughts about that? It does come back a bit to the question that we had also in the pre-discussion. Like, are we putting the bar for AI significantly higher than the bar for human contributions? I think it relates to that topic.
My personal thinking is about there's fundamental difference between using the Google, and using the generative AI now. Use Google, you help you to find the information, and then you have to digest this. You have to understand this, and then it becomes part of your, the knowledge, and then you generate, the research, generate the content. But generative AI, you use to generate the content directly. So who will take for me, I think yes, each of them, human and the AI, they all made mistake. But the AI I think is a double-edged sword. So it depends on where to be used, who you use it, for what purpose. If the paper mill uses generative AI to create this, the fake papers, etc., it's totally different from the researchers make mistakenly they generate some of the things. So I think for me, I think it's very hard to talk about whether we should add the AI as an author or not now, because technology is one factor, one part, but also, as I talked about before, AI governance, policy, and the law, and the copyright law, and the policies, etc. So now we should have the ecosystem, in the intelligent age. Currently, even the copyright law is still focused on the human, which developed maybe 100 years ago for human only. So I think that until all this, the policy and like Claudia said, the policy and the guidelines and also the law has become more mature. I think it's very hard to only discuss about think about the AI alone. So that's my personal opinion.
Thank you very much. And I'm afraid for now we'll have to leave it at that. We are at time, and I see Alison is also keen to take the stage and host the session for the Versailles Innovation Award finalists. Let me thank the panel once more, and I'm sure you guys are around to discuss further if people would like.